Thou seest me, oh my God, detached from all save thee, detached from all save thee, and cleaving unto thee, cleaving unto thee, oh my God. Guide me then in all mine affairs, unto that which profiteth me, for the glory of thy cause and the loftiness of the station of thy loved ones, of thy loved ones. Ooh. Thou seest me, oh my God, detached from all save thee, detached from all save thee, and cleaving unto thee, cleaving unto thee, oh my God. Guide me then in all mine affairs, unto that which profiteth me, for the glory of thy cause and the loftiness of the station of thy loved ones, of thy loved ones, of thy loved ones, of thy loved ones. Ooh.
Pray and meditate about it. And we should use the prayers from the manifestations because they have the greatest power, according to Sheikh Effendi. And then we must remain in the silence of contemplation for a few minutes. And that is important because through meditation we can receive divine inspiration and we can talk with our own spirit. And there are beautiful quotes about that, and I'm going to link them in the website. So, after we pray and meditate about it, we go to step number 2. Arrive to a decision and hold to this. So, if you make the decision, you have to stick with it until the end. Perseverance. And Sheikh Effendi even says that the decision is born in the contemplation. So while we're meditating, if we are truly meditating, not going on and on in a to-do list in our heads. So while we're meditating, when you're focusing on the prayer and getting in tune with God, that is when the decision will probably pop up in your head. And that decision, you must stick to it. And Sheikh Effendi even continues by saying, it may seem almost impossible of accomplishment, but if it seems to be as answer to a prayer or a way of solving the problem, then immediately take the next step, which is step number 3. Have determination to carry the decision through. And this will take a lot of courage, energy, strength, all that stuff. But you must, in my head, this is how I see it. If God is showing you the way, He is probably going to help you along the way because He wants you to get to the other side. No? Or else, why would He show you a way that He doesn't want you to get there? Right? That's how I see it. Anyways, let's continue. So, have determination to carry the decision through. And then Sheikh Effendi says, Many fail here. I wonder why. And then he continues by saying, the decision bending into determination is blighted and instead becomes a wish or a vague longing. When determination is born, immediately take the next step. Go for it. Basically, this is what Sheikh Effendi is saying. This takes us to step number 4. Have faith and confidence. Believe in what you're going after and trust, have confidence that it's going to happen. And this is what Sheikh Effendi said. Have faith and confidence that the power will flow through you. The right will appear. The door will open. The right thought, the right message, the right principle, or the right book will be given to you. That's so cool. Have confidence and the right thing will come to your need. Oh my God, this is awesome. Don't you think so? Then, as you rise from prayer, take at once the 5th step. Let's just pause and realize how awesome this is. This reminds me of breezes of confirmation, doesn't it? It's like when you want something and you work for it and God is there and He's confirming it. This is so cool. Step number 5. Act as though it has already been answered. Then act with tireless, ceaseless energy. And as you act, you yourself will become a magnet which will attract more power to your being until you become an unobstructed channel for the divine power to flow through you. Many pray, but do not remain for the last half of the first step. Some who meditate arrive at a decision but fail to hold it. Few have the determination to carry the decision through. Still fewer have the confidence that the right thing will come to their need. But how many remember to act as though it had all been answered? How true are these words? Greater than the prayer is the spirit in which it is uttered, and greater than the way it is uttered. It is the spirit in which it is carried out. So yes, these are the 5 steps. Aren't they amazing?
You see, it's really very difficult to convey the events of even 50 years ago in a country like Persia, which was so backward in those days, especially the part that I come from. Yazd was 50 years behind time. And so the things that I have seen then are things that even my contemporaries in other parts of Persia hadn't seen, you see. We were living, in those days, the Baha'i community were so much surrounded by the enemies of the faith that you can say we had 2 different camps. One was our camp as Baha'is, we were as Baha'is, and one was the other. So we had a very clear community. We were living in our own community. And in fact, we were even self-sufficient in many ways, even for daily life, we were self-sufficient. Yet, it was very clear that we grew up in the faith, and it was no question of having a foot in the other world, in the outside world, and in your own community. We were there, and therefore Baha'is grew up as really Baha'is with deep roots, and the devotion of the friends knew no bounds. Now, of course, although I was born just at the end of the heroic age, that's when Abdul Baha passed away. But when the formative age came, and that was the period that we are talking about during Shoghi Effendi's ministry, there were a great many of the disciples of Baha'u'llah that I sort of grew up amongst them. And although I don't want to talk about myself really at all, but I must say that my father was one of those disciples of Baha'u'llah, one of those people who had been with him for some time, for about 9 months in Akka. And these believers, these early believers who had met with Baha'u'llah, they were a different caliber of men. Not because they were more outstanding in many ways from us, But in fact, from the point of view of ordinary knowledge and education, comparing it with the present day, they had nothing. But yet they were great spiritual giants of this dispensation because, you know why? It's because they came in touch with the manifestation of God. It's like a piece of iron which becomes magnetized. When you come close to the magnet, that piece of iron is no longer a piece of iron, it becomes a magnet. And therefore these early disciples of Baha'u'llah, those people who belong to the heroic age of the faith, they were like mountains of steadfastness. Nothing shook them, nothing ever affected them. They grew up as spiritual giants. They really were giants. This world meant nothing to them. And this is why they gave their lives with great joy. And so now having the world in those days were very different around us. We were cut off from the communication point of view from the rest of the world. For instance, we were living in the summertime in villages there, and these villages are surrounded by mountains. And people who lived there, they had never been out of that village. They lived in that village all their lives. And there were no such thing as newspapers, television, radios, nothing at all. And so we were sort of a small community of our own, only living and trying to live in accordance with the teachings of Baha'u'llah, and surrounded by the enemies. And that's another part of it. And we were always persecuted, people who throw stones at you, or your children even. I couldn't go to school ever on my own. Somebody had to accompany me, an adult. And even then he was beaten up so many times that once actually his eardrum broke and he became fully deaf, completely deaf. So you see, we had this particular, but that the joy of being a Baha'i was tremendous. And the believers had such faith, such reliance on Baha'u'llah. They had nothing else but to rely on him. Such reliance that it's not possible to describe it. And they were mostly, quite a number of them were illiterates. Although quite a lot of them were educated, but quite a number of them were illiterates. Now, now that I have come to Alaska, I must tell you something. Because on the way, I was flying from London to here, and it took 8 hours, and we went over the pole, you see. And my thoughts during this flight went back to the days of my childhood. And I'll tell you why. When we were growing up in those days, there were no such things as cars. There were no such thing as even bicycles. As a little boy of maybe 7 or 8, I'd never seen a bicycle. We couldn't visualize a bicycle. We couldn't visualize a car. There was no electricity. Nothing. None of these things. And I remember this. And when I was flying, this time in the jet coming over, this thought came to me very vividly. My thoughts went back to the earlier days, because in those days, I remember this very clearly. Maybe I was 7 or 8 years of age. And I still remember this. That we were sitting in this great gathering of the believers. Many, many hundreds. And quite a number of them were illiterates. But don't underestimate the illiterate Baha'is of those days. They knew the writings so well. Many of them had memorized the writings. I remember many of these people who were illiterates, you would ask them to chant some tablets in a meeting. And he would say, on what subject? And he would choose, you would say such and such a subject. And he could, in his memory, he could chant it for about half an hour. You see, one of the writings of Baha'u'llah. They had such deep understanding of the faith. And these people, I remember very clearly, when I was 7 or 8 years of age, they were discussing the future of the faith. They're discussing their duties. They're discussing the writings. And among these writings, there was something which nobody could fully answer it, although they answered it. And I'll tell you what the question was and what the answer. And this, when I was flying over, it really struck me very forcefully. As I said, it took me back to those days. The question was this, that we read in the writings of Baha'u'llah that this message is for all mankind. We know that. He addresses all peoples of the world. And his teachings are all related to universality for all mankind, Now, those people did not know where mankind was. they had no idea, because as I said, they were brought up and born in that same town, and they in the same village, and they would die in the same village probably. But they knew that there were some places far away, and they did not know geography. They did not know anything about geography. And the only thing they knew about these places was because Abdul Baha had been to Western world, and in his talks, which we had there, we could read the talks of Abdul Baha, and the towns they had been familiar with, the names of the towns like London, Paris, Chicago, all these names were very common names to those Persians who were reading the writings, but they didn't know where it was. The only thing they had seen was one European. We had one English doctor in Yazd, and he was considered as a Superman. You see? That's all they knew of the Western world. And then this was the question. They said, we know the faith is for all mankind, and our duty is to teach them. How can we go all these distances to teach them? We can't go on donkeys. You know, this was very genuine. If you had never seen a car, if you had never seen a bicycle even, this becomes a very genuine question. How can we go with donkeys? And the answer, you know what the answer was? The answer is, this is the cause of God. God will create the means for it. Now this question has remained with me, and the answer has remained with me. This is the cause of God. God will create the means. And they believed it. But they couldn't visualize it in those days. And now you can realize why I was saying, when I was flying over this area, it brought me very forcefully. Now, all this communication system which has come into the world is so that the message of Baha'u'llah can be taught to the people. Otherwise, it would have been meaningless. The faith would have been entirely meaningless. How can you teach a universal faith without having communications? And be sure everything that the faith needs, the facilities for it will come at the time, just at the time.